Welcome to the Future of Work, the live stream where we talk about how forward-thinking organizations use Giant to really unlock their people. As always, I'm Bronson, the CEO of Giant, and with me I have Mike, our president. Mike, today's actually a special day for you, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what today commemorates for you, and let's celebrate a memory for a second.
Yeah, dude, you put me on the spot. Yeah, today is my mom's birthday. She would have been 61 today, but tragically, but also beautifully, she passed away very suddenly back in February of this year. So in addition to COVID and everything else that's been going on in the world, we've also had some mourning going on in the family. So yeah, just a good day to honor my mom. And you know this, Bronson, but her legacy lives on. I mean, she loved people better than anyone I've ever met in my life. She had the biggest servant heart. Every year in her card, I'd say, Mom, you have the biggest servant's heart I've ever seen in my life. So she definitely had it's interesting in Giant, we talk about what it means to be a liberator, to fight for the highest possible good of others. And that's what she did every moment of her life. So yeah, it's a great day to remember my mom, Bev Oppedahl, and what the dent that she put in the universe. So
yeah, she really embodied what Giant represents.
Yeah.
Loving people, fighting for their highest possible good. And I didn't want to do a live stream. We're raw on this live stream. We've always been raw. I didn't want to do this live stream with this memory in your mind the whole time without talking about it. I wanted people to know that today's a hard day for you, also a day that you're celebrating, and at the same time mourning. It's one of those days. And so we're with you. We love you, Mike, and we're glad that you got to spend the time you did spend with her and have the memories you have. So that's awesome. So Mike, let's get into some of the details that we're actually talking about today. And thank you for letting me go there for a second, even though I didn't tell you. I wanted
you always surprise me on these live streams, dude. Yeah, seriously. I was like, whoa, I told you if I talked about it, I'd start to get emotional, and then you'd maybe talk about it. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So today we're talking about capacity. So as some of the people watching this know, when we work with an organization, the first thing we do is really take an assessment. We want to assess their teams and find out where there's growth opportunities. And we assess them on 5 different metrics. And one of those metrics is called capacity. And I would even say that capacity is the least understood of the 5 metrics that we measure. So Mike, why don't you take a moment and tell us, what does it mean if you score low in capacity in general?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is that you almost have to earn the right to get to capacity on the flywheel. Like we always say, but you have to start with communication and relationships. You have to establish psychological safety so people know, hey, it's safe to play on this team. Once you do that, then you can say, hey, let's get on the same page, Bronson. Let's make sure that we know what the strategy is. Let's make sure we know what we're doing today. Then you get to execution. Hey, we got a lot of stuff to do. The strategy is not going to do itself. We got to work on this. Then at some point you get to the point where you go, hey, we have a really high performing team. Like we're getting a lot of stuff done. And that's when capacity becomes a huge issue, because what happens is highly performing teams often have way too much to do. They have to-do lists that never end. They have to tell themselves to shut off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. whenever's the right time for them. They're usually back working, before they go to bed. I mean, that's what happens to highly performing teams if you're not careful. So we have to watch out for this thing called capacity. And Bronson, you said that it's actually a confusing thing, and I actually agree with you. And I'm gonna confuse it even more, unfortunately. There's 2 ways to think about capacity, right? What is the capacity of this cup? This is a coffee mug. There is a volume, literally like a scientific volume. There's a capacity of this cup. Mm-hmm. So what would it mean to increase the capacity? Like, does that mean that, to get a bigger cup? Like, right, so this water cup, right, obviously has a larger capacity. So do you literally take what you've got and replace it with this? Or do you hey, we need to have less fluid in here so there's more room to fill the thing up? Like, does that make sense? Like, it's hard to think about. So the way I think about capacity for teams is you got 2 things. Everyone has an individual capacity. Some are higher than others. We know that we're all unique. The team has a collective capacity. There's 2 things you can do. You can be smart and wise as a team to create more room for the current team, or you can literally add things to the team to make the volume larger. So there's really 2 ways to think about capacity.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. I love that kind of 2-pronged approach, being more efficient and more wise within the resources you have. So you're not getting a bigger cup. You're just managing what's inside the cup a little better. And then there's also times where you're like, you know what, we need a bigger cup. And that might be adding people to the team. It might be, hiring an expert that can come in and do some things that you don't have the capacity for. There's things there that you can do as well. So let's be raw for a moment. What's our lowest score as a team, Mike? Actual giant score.
It's capacity. We created this. The first version of this assessment was created back in like 2016, and ever since then, our lowest score has always been capacity.
Yeah. So let's actually talk through, what does it feel like having a low capacity score inside of our headquarters? What's some of the friction? What's some of the rub? What's some of the things that really happen because that's our lowest score?
Yeah. So reality, right? So Tuesday, I called you up about 4 p.m. and said, dude, today's just been chaos. Like, it just felt like it. And it wasn't because anyone made any mistakes and no one did anything wrong. And it wasn't because of our clients. I just had back to back meetings. I'm trying to pull from our lead developer, right? Our CTO, and going, hey, I need this. And he's got a to-do list longer than I have ever seen in my life. And so what it feels like, Bronson, is we're doing a lot of really cool things. We're impacting people all over the world. We're achieving our vision. And yet there's just so much to do. It feels like, man, I got to shut myself off so I can be a family man, right? My husband, be a husband and be a father. And it's like, but there's so many things to do. So it feels a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we're strapped on a roller coaster and it's going fast, and we don't have a lot of control is what it feels like. Today, we're going to talk about how to get some control, how to actually maneuver the roller coaster where we want it to go. I would even say this, you made a good point just now. Our vision is really big. Therefore, it feels like we're kind of running at capacity. I think there's a correlation. I think the bigger the vision and the more compelling the vision, the lower your capacity might be, because we're not trying to do something small. If our goal was to impact a few organizations, we wouldn't be at capacity. We would have plenty of volume left. We would all go home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd be done with work. It'd be easy to turn off our brains. The fact is, we're trying to put a dent in the universe. We're trying to unlock the potential on a global scale. We want to affect 1 billion lives. Yeah, it's going to take some work. Our to-do list is going to be a little longer than people who have lower aspirations. So I don't think we should lower our vision. I'm not willing to. You're not willing to.
No.
We have to get smart about capacity, though. So let's actually look at an exercise that we do internally and that we're also going to do today with you all, that we recommend doing within your teams when you need more capacity. So this is called an intentional transfer plan for capacity. And so this is really a tool called Multiplying Magic, and we're going to talk through that tool in a moment. But this team exercise actually starts with a question, which is, what key skills or behaviors do you excel at that you think you should multiply to your teammates, and why? So let's actually do that for a second. We'll start with you, Mike. What is a skill or behavior? No false modesty. Just tell it like it is. What's something that you excel at that you think you should multiply into other people on the team?
So believe it or not, the first thing that popped in my mind was actually the ability to act cool under pressure when there's too many things going on. Mm-hmm. Like, honestly, like not getting to the end of your rope too quickly, and being short with people or answering things the wrong way or freaking out, but almost like being the ability in the storm to slow down and see everything and work on the right stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're brilliant at that. I mean, absolutely, that is what you do. I've never seen you uncool. I've never seen you in a meeting like lose it or not have control of it or not know what to do next. You're great on your feet. It's absolutely a skill that could be transferred and should be transferred. I would say for me, it's prioritization. Mm-hmm. I can see a lot of to-dos and say, you know what, there's 30 to-dos on this list. Those 2 actually matter, and the other 28 kind of matter, and actually have the fortitude internally and the grit to say, I'll not do 28 things so that I can focus on what's important, and I don't care who's mad. I have a way to actually have a laser focus that I think is unique. I think a lot of people, they just start doing stuff. I don't. I prioritize, and if it's not at the top of the list, it never gets done, because there's always one thing that should be done at any given time. And if it's not that thing, why are we working on it, right? So that's something I could transfer into others, and we'd probably actually have more capacity, because we wouldn't feel like everything's important, because it isn't, right?
And I would say this, Bronson, this is a funny exercise, right? So literally I'm like bragging on myself, and you're bragging on yourself. Yeah. That might feel weird to most people. I'll tell you what, you said no false modesty. We all have really, really unique talents and gifts. In Giant, we like to call them superpowers. We all have them. Each one of you listening to this, anyone who listens to this in the future, you have superpowers that your team that you need to bring to the table for your team to achieve the vision. So here's the thing. most people won't take the time to slow down and say, what am I really good at? Like, what natural talents do I have that I'm really good at? Secondarily, if you don't know how to do it, or you feel like that's just a weird exercise, ask the people around you. Like, I do this every once in a while. I go to my teammates and go, hey, Hunter, hey, Justin, like, what do you see in me that you think is helpful for the team? And like, let them tell you, and then go, oh, okay. And sometimes you might be surprised. Other people think, like, by the way, the one I gave you came from Hunter. Hunter's like, Mike, you're always like, no matter how chaotic things are, no matter how much pressure, no matter how weird the meeting is, you stay cool. And I really appreciate that. So the thing is, ask the people around you what skills and talents they might want to receive from you. But you got to start by creating a list, because most people are accidental when it comes to intentional transfer.
Yeah. And I think we even have a blind spot of our own superpowers. They're so close to us, and it's an unconscious competence. We're good at it. We don't know why we're good at it. We assume other people are good at it. We can't imagine not being good at it. Therefore, we don't think to transfer it, because it just feels like it is our atmosphere. Does a fish know it's in water, right? It's like, do you know your actual atmosphere, or is it just a part of the fabric of your life, right? And so asking people is a great way to get that insight. So this is the multiplying magic tool, and it actually starts with the question we just talked about. It starts with, what specific skill sets or leadership behaviors are you looking to multiply? So let's actually connect this to capacity before we go further. Yeah. How does this increase capacity if you multiply a skill set you have into other people on the team? What does that do for capacity?
Yeah, so I mean, we were talking about an example this morning, but like our CTO, we've got another lead developer. It's like, if the CTO can actually multiply gifting skill sets, different parts of projects, if he can multiply that into our lead developer, then he has the capacity to move up, right? To do more, to focus on bigger priorities or bigger projects or bigger things. So what happens is, as we multiply skills throughout the team, there's more people that can do them. And finally, you don't have these like horrible bottlenecks. Because I can tell you, there's a few on our team right now where it's like, if that person were gone for a week or two, like, it wouldn't be pretty. And like, that's not a situation you want to be in, for no other reason than just like, hey, that person needs to take time off every once in a while and like get a week to themselves, right? Heaven forbid they get sick or something happens in their family and they got to go. That's why you have to multiply these things, so you don't have one person who can do, the most important thing.
Absolutely. You said something. You don't want a single point of failure, and you don't want bottlenecks. If I could even make a recommendation for a book, I read a book a few months ago called The Goal. It sold like 1 million copies. The book is long and wordy. I would skim a lot of it, but there's some gold in it. There are some ideas around capacity that have just blown my mind in terms of thinking about bottlenecks. And it really just illustrates the importance of this tool. You have to get rid of bottlenecks by multiplying the magic, by multiplying your skill set into others, so that you can have 2 people that could possibly do that work instead of 1, or 3 people or 4 people instead of 1. And so you can just not be running ragged all the time if you're the only one that can do something. So this is really a game plan, right? This tool gives us a game plan. First, we identify the skill sets or leadership behaviors that we want to multiply. You named one for you. I named one for me. We should probably make a list of like 3 each that we want to multiply. And everyone on our team should make a list of 3 things they want to multiply and start there. But it doesn't end there. Wanting to multiply, wanting to give your skill sets away, it doesn't do anything for anyone, right? You have to actually do something. So the first thing is, to whom? You have to decide, who are you going to give this skill to? I would say you probably shouldn't give your skill to everyone. It may not be appropriate. So how do you make a decision on who to give it to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would figure out who's the person who actually, number one, probably can do it. So let's be honest, right? Sometimes like you have different giftings as a pioneer creative than I do as a guardian pioneer. There's just certain things that you do that I'm not going to be, it's not going to be naturally a talent or a skill for me. So number one, I would say, do they have the capacity and the wherewithal to actually do it? And number two, who's somebody who might actually take on that role inside your team, right? So let's just say, for example, if Conley's working on UX, UI, I may not need to transfer some leadership skills of teams to him if he feels like that's the role he's going to stay in, right? And I'm not saying Conley wouldn't lead a team in the future. The idea is Conley might go, I don't want to do that. Well, then guess what? You have to figure out somebody who actually has the desire to want to do it, and it's actually going to be a skill set that helps me move up as they take on more responsibility.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's almost like, practically, do they need that skill set?
Right.
And even if they need it, do they want it? Yep. So it's almost like they have to want it and need it. And if those two things collide, if someone on the team wants your skill set and they need your skill set for a future endeavor, that's probably a really good candidate for the to whom, for who you should transfer that into. Just imagine the power if everyone was transferring at least one skill at any given moment, right? Because this is a slow roll. Like at first, you won't see impact in the first week, but over time, if everyone identified a skill and then they found one person that needed that skill and wanted that skill and started transferring it, over the course of months, you would see the capacity of the team increase. So this has already given me ideas for what we should do, Mike, honestly. Physician, heal thyself. I think we need to do some of this.
Right. Well, I was just going to say, B, this has been, honestly, it has been a kryptonite in my leadership since I started leading teams when I was 23, is the honest truth. So I just have, you know me, I'm like an execution maniac. I'm just got to-do list I'm smashing every single day of my life. Too many meetings, too many conversations, too many things going on. And this has always been a kryptonite for me. And I know it. And yet sometimes I don't take the time. Like there's just too many things to do. I make the excuse, well, when am I going to do it? Right. But to your point, which is the next thing, but it's like, if we were doing this, this would be fantastic for our team. Like, and by the way, it's our lowest score. So we ought to do something about it. But if you don't do it over time, you think you're doing a lot of stuff by getting stuff done. But what happens is you're always at capacity, right? You're always at red line. You're always almost at burnout if you don't figure out how to create more capacity and increase that volume.
Absolutely. So let's move to the next segment here, which is when. So not only do you have to identify somebody, you have to decide like, when are we going to actually transfer this skill? What have you seen as best practices? Is it getting with that person for an hour a week and just kind of jamming through your skill? Is it getting with them for a solid day and just doing a deep dive in something and then kind of moving on and never revisiting it? What works in terms of a win rhythm?
Yeah, and there's actually two tools in the toolkit. One is informal versus formal, and the other one is developing others. So I highly recommend going and watching those tools and getting more of this, because I'm going to give you like a flyover of this stuff. I say it's both and, Bronson. You got to have, number one, you got to have formal time that's scheduled where you're actually sitting down to go through and actually work on this almost like it's a project, right? And the other one is informal, meaning, hey, I want you to come with me to this meeting and observe what I do, right? So it's like you're being intentional, but it's like we're not like working on it. It's like you're going to see some stuff, and then later on when we're going to do a drive-by afterwards and go, hey, what did you see there? Like, what questions do you have? Like, could you do that yourself, right? So really formal and informal, like, structured and kind of haphazard. And it's also, you got to figure out how to help people like watch you and observe you, and then you watch and observe them so that they can actually like practice the skill, right? Where do you win the game? On the practice field. So you almost need like safe places to practice these skills so you can actually get to be an expert at it.
Absolutely. You've heard the old adage, and we have, tools that mimic this, is that, I do it, and then you help me do it, and then I help you do it, and then you do it. Yep. There's this natural transition from all me to all you, but in the middle, we're helping each other with different weighting. I think about my own leadership, and for me, I think I'm very good at modeling things informally. I don't think I'm very intentional about transferring skills. I don't set up times to say, you know what, I want you to have this skill that I have. Let's work through a process for me to give that to you. I think I almost expect people to see it being modeled, but I don't think that's enough. And I don't think people know they're supposed to be looking for things. Even if I told them, hey, I'm modeling this skill, just watch for it, that would go a long way. Because I don't think they even know what's being modeled if they're not told sometimes to be on the lookout for it. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. And I'm laughing because I've been talking to Jeremy and Steve about this for years. We always say, if somebody doesn't know they're being apprenticed, they're not. It's that simple. Like, you have to literally take the time to go, hey, Bronson, I want you to watch how I do this. Oh, okay. Right. So if we think, are things caught or taught, like, what it's like in the end, if someone doesn't know you're trying to transfer that skill to them, it's not happening.
Yeah, no, it's great. I actually think right now, how many people know I'm trying to transfer a skill into them that I am trying to transfer? And it's like, oh, they don't know. So it ain't happening. Let's go to the next spot here, which is how, right? So you have a skill identified. You know who you're going to transfer it into because they need it and want it. You know when you're going to do it. There's some formal and informal time to do that. And you're going to work through that apprenticeship square. Now, how do you actually do it? And we have 4 words here: inform, train, coach, or apprentice. Now, to some people, those all sound like synonyms. They're all the same thing, right? Oh, you're getting with somebody and you're delivering information to them. What are the nuances of those 4 words in your mind, Mike?
Yeah, so we actually have another tool, entire tool that goes through intentional transfer. And it talks about basically inform, train, coach, and apprentice. Inform is really to masses. So sometimes that's like a keynote, like, or me to like a large group, right? It's like the entire team. Hey guys, I'm informing you. Here's a leadership skill. So like, so to your point, Bronson, let's say there was a skill that you wanted the entire team to get. You could do it in a way where we're all on tiles on Zoom, right? These days, or in a room, and you're actually just, you're informing, you're literally just telling us, right? You're going through some slides and saying, this is what I've learned about, that's informing, right? Mm-hmm. Training goes a little bit deeper. So you're training us, but we're in the audience, we're asking questions. We're like, hey, Bronson, tell me more about that. But so you're still imparting and kind of informing, but there's some interaction, right? Mm-hmm. Coaching is in an even smaller group. So that would be like you and me and 5 other people. We're in a small group, and you're going, all right, guys, I want to actually go through what I'm trying to, apprentice or intentionally transfer you guys to you guys. And you're actually getting an interaction. We're learning from one another. Like maybe I do an example or practice something. There's other observers. So it's an even smaller group, and it even goes deeper. And then finally, apprentice is like you saying, hey, Justin, I'm going to teach you this skill, and we're going to go on this journey for the next 6 months, and I'm going to like completely give this over to you, right? So that's like, it's almost like 1 to 3 people where you're saying, I'm intentionally going to pour these things into you, all my knowledge, all my skills, all my expertise. So again, like you said, it might sound like synonyms, but it goes from like broadcasting, informing at the highest level, all the way down to like, I'm intentionally pouring into you.
And so it might seem like the goal is apprenticeship for every skill. It's like, well, that's deeper and that's more thorough. Is that true though? Is it that some skills just need to be informed and some skills need to be trained? Or is it that, no, we're actually trying to get to apprentice with every skill? How do you think about that?
Well, we found that like the majority of leaders we work with cannot apprentice more than 3 people. So we're literally talking about 1, 2, or 3 people max. So to answer your question, it's literally impossible. So I'm going to apprentice my entire, I've got 20 people in my organization. I'm going to apprentice every single one of them. It's not going to happen. There's a level of depth and relationship you just cannot achieve with that many people. So no, the answer is actually you need to be intentional to look at the 4 and go, okay, if there's something I want my entire company to get, then I better figure out a way to inform them and have that be like useful to them in an informing kind of environment. And then you might take 1 to 3 of the people in your organization and say, hey, in the future, I could see the 3 of you running, like taking over my job and really increasing the overall capacity of the organization. But again, there's going to be different ways to do that through the different 4 filters, and you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah. So we have a question here from George. He says, to be honest, sometimes I don't want to transfer my skills because I don't want that other person to end up better than me in that area. How do I get over this? He's talking about self-preservation, isn't he, Mike? Yeah. How do you get over that fear? And George, first, thanks for being honest. That's a vulnerable question to ask. And that's exactly what real people are thinking when they hear this tool. Not oh, this is great, let's get everyone all the skills. This is some of the internal dialogue that's actually happening. What would you say, Mike? How does somebody get over this self-preservation?
First off, like you said, I think George is awesome. He's basically verbalizing what every single one of us has thought at some point. I don't care if you have the lowest wall of self-preservation in the world. Everyone has had this thought. Well, wait a minute. If I make that person a genius, and all of a sudden now they're shining in an area where I used to be the shining star, like that's totally natural. So George, thanks for the honesty. What I'd say is this: we've got to, and I've had to do this, George, myself, is I have to get over and say, you know what? Actually, if I work myself out of a job, I actually have to believe that I become invaluable to the organization. Like, because I've completely replaced myself. And so now I have the capacity to move on to bigger and better things, to more responsibility, to bigger vision, to your point, Bronson. So if I had this thing, George, I'd go, let's say I'm just picking Justin. If I was pouring myself into Justin saying, hey, he's going to take over all my responsibilities. Well, now we don't need Mike anymore, right? Wrong. What it means is I now can focus on even bigger things. You said, Bronson, you know how to take the 30 things and prioritize the top 2. Guess what? If Justin takes over more of my role, I now get to work on the 2 things that you think are most important, which make me even more invaluable to the organization. Do you agree, Bronson?
I absolutely agree. I think people that are at capacity, meaning they're not transferring their skill set, so they're becoming bottlenecks on purpose because they don't want other people to have their skills. Bottlenecks probably don't get promoted as quick as people that have capacity, because when you have capacity, you get to focus on other things that show value in new areas or things that other people really need you to come through on. So in my own career, my capacity is where I have shown my value, not in my being a bottleneck for other people. And so I think it's a great question. But I think also if you are able to transfer a skill, that becomes your skill. Like you become the fire starter. You become the person that can transfer skills, which in and of itself is invaluable. So here's a question from Cindy. She says, this is very helpful for multiplication. Without it, there is no growth and organizations will fizzle out when you leave. Yeah, think about that. what happens, Mike, if you don't transfer your skill set and eventually you leave? Because right now, we don't stay with organizations our entire career. There is no being with someone for 50 years and, being on their pension plan. That's the old model. Now people come in for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years if you're lucky, and they're moving around. It's musical chairs. We may not like it, but it is the reality we're in. If they don't transfer those skill sets and they leave in 5 years, what happens to the organization?
So Bronson, you always say on this show, you and I are raw. We're just real honest. This happened to me, Cindy. I used to run a healthcare company in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I had hundreds of employees, and we were doing a lot of cool things, and we were growing and having fun. And then I actually moved over to Giant. That was my last career I had before Giant. And it happened to me. I didn't take the time to transfer knowledge, skills, and expertise into my team. And I'm not saying the organization fizzled out. And by the way, I'm not saying that I was precious, but there were certain things I did that I never taught anyone else to do. So things got rough when I left. And, my wife, of course, that's honoring to her. She goes, "Oh, that's awesome. They needed you." For me, I'm like, that's actually an embarrassment. And it's actually really bad leadership that when I left, things got hard and got worse. So I'd say, Bronson, Cindy, very good, very, very, very solid point. And I'd say I've actually seen this happen to me personally, which again, Bronson, I don't want to repeat history. So how do we make sure that we're continuing to raise up the people around us so something like that couldn't or would never happen to Giant?
Absolutely. I love it. Amy says, "You guys are blowing my mind right now. So great." You know what's interesting about that thought? What we're saying is very simple. I mean, there is not anything complicated we're saying. There's nothing nuanced. This isn't PhD level magic. This is just, you have a skill, you should transfer it, make sure you know who and when and how you're going to do it, have a game plan. That helps the organization. It helps you. Let's multiply the magic. I mean, what we're saying is so simple, isn't it, Mike?
It is. That's the idea. So if something's not simple, people won't engage. I found that no matter where we go, if something isn't simple, people don't engage. So we have to simplify it. But the reality is, this takes so much time and effort. Like we always say, intentional transfer is about 3 times as hard as not. So in the end, Bronson, it's simple to understand, but doing the work is where the rubber meets the road. And I've told you, like I find this in cycles in my leadership where I'm forgetting to do this. So it's very simple, but very hard to put into practice. But we also say this, it's 3 times as hard, but it's like 7 times the ROI. So think about this. If we actually took the time to do this in our team, think about how far we could go. Right? It's a lot more work. Like, what do I want to do this afternoon? I don't want to, yeah, absolutely, Cindy. I don't want to actually take the time this afternoon. Guess what? I've got 5 other meetings. I don't want to have to take time in the middle of those or cancel those meetings or reprioritize to make sure that I'm transferring a skill. It's easier, Bronson, just to take the fires in the field and just go put them out and, save the day again and then call it a day and like do it again tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Totally. So I actually have a difficult question for you, Mike. And I know you're good on the spot, so that's why I could just throw anything at you. So if you struggle with capacity, you don't have time to fix your capacity by multiplying skills. There's a paradox here. There's a conundrum. You lack capacity, and yet we're saying, oh, find some time to identify people that want and need your skill set and have formal and informal time with them. Oh, but you're already at capacity. So now just add more time to the end of your day. You're already getting off at 6. Now just get off at 7 because you need to multiply the magic. What do? How do you fix capacity when you have no capacity?
You have to flip the switch. It's like anything else in life, right? People don't change until the pain of change exceeds the pain of staying the same, right? So the reality, or staying the same exceeds the change of pain. So here's the deal. You have to decide and go, you know what? I don't want to live like this forever. I've got to figure out a way to multiply my skills, my knowledge, skills, expertise into those around me. I need to move up. And you have to literally decide. I have to look at my calendar and go, I'm not going to take that meeting. Like, I'm going to say no to that, or I'm going to cancel this, or I'm going to block time out ahead of time, right? We need to actually schedule our priorities. So you have to just have a flip of the switch and go, I'm just going to go for it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to start. I see the value. Like, I've been convinced, Bronson's, he's proven his point to me. Like, I'm just going to have to flip the switch, put it in there and go for it.
Yeah. I love your answer, because your answer wasn't, well, you're just going to add more time to your day. It was, you need to prioritize differently and delete something in the middle of the day. So here's an example from yesterday. I needed to record a webinar. It was the number 1 thing on my list, not number 2, not number 3, not number 10. It was the number 1 thing. And I looked at my schedule. I had no time to do it because I only had a few minutes here and a few minutes there. And so I made a couple of phone calls and canceled a couple of meetings. And I said, hey, let's push this to tomorrow, because what you need to meet with me about is not the number 1 thing. What I'm doing alone is the number 1 thing. Just trust me. And everybody's like, great, cool, got it. So we move meetings around. It's that way to think about it, is you need to look at your calendar and say, you know what? if I multiply the magic, really good things are going to happen long term. What meeting can I delete tomorrow to build in some time, either formally or informally, to multiply the magic? What meetings can I delete next week? Or what things can I not attend or opt out of? A lot of our day is spent doing things that don't matter. I know that is a difficult thing to hear, but if you were to look back at the last year of your life and actually identify the moments in your calendar that mattered, there would be very few of them highlighted. Most of it was busy work. Most of it was making you feel good, but not actually moving the needle. Most of it you could have done without. Capacity is almost a mental game as much as it's a physical game. And so I think you can build slack into your day to multiply the magic. Do you agree with that, Mike?
No question. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you've got to understand. So if staying the same is painful, then you'll finally do the work to prioritize and make the change. That's the reality. And I can agree with you more. Like I said, you have to look at your day, look at your calendar, look at your life and go, you know what? These things are worth not doing. Last week we talked about the X factor. It says, hey, can I afford not to do this? You got to ask that question and go, yeah, I really could afford not to do that. I'm going to give up good for great. And that's what it really comes down to.
That's awesome. So let's bring this in for a landing. Zoom back a little bit. I like the big picture. I'm a pioneer creative. That's what I do. I see the big picture. So imagine in your team that you implemented the Invincible operating system. If you don't know what that means, we're going to talk about it a lot more next week. So you definitely want to tune into that one. But you implement the Invincible operating system. You start with the assessment. In that assessment, you realize you're low on capacity. You can then do an exercise like we just did with you all with your team. You could have one of our experts do it with you all, or you could have an internal person in your organization do this exercise with you all. And imagine what would happen if you were in a room with your team having this conversation with the people that you work with every day. And so that you can actually have more capacity, not be running so ragged, not have schedules that are filled to the brim, and make sure that if somebody quits or gets fired or leaves or something else happens, that you don't lose out on all the potential they were bringing to the organization because you transferred skill sets from them into other people. That's what we're promising that is possible if you really take this to heart, what we're talking about. Mike, last question for you. When you do this in teams, do you see capacity rise? Do you see them able to actually achieve more, do more, accomplish more, and have more free time in their life?
I really do. The best leaders in the world, first of all, we say are liberators, right? They're going to fight for the highest possible good of those around them. But the best leaders in the world, they take the time to pour into those around them, which makes everyone's lives better. It's just the reality, but it's actually more rare than you think. Like, I don't see it as often, even though we preach it and we try to, live it out ourselves. It's just, again, it's just, you got to make that mental shift to go, this is important enough to do. It's not only going to benefit me, it's going to benefit my team, the people around me, the organization as on the whole, and the world, basically. So it's like, yeah, you got to just decide that it's hard, but you got to go for it.
Yeah. Something you just said, I want to end with this thought is it's not glamorous. Increasing capacity is not glamorous. Increasing relationships, well, that's glamorous, right? We're going to work together, be a team. Increasing communication. You can get a degree in communication. You can't get a degree in capacity, right? You think about execution. You go into Barnes & Noble, you look on Amazon, there's nothing but books on how to get more done or getting things done or, what to focus on and the 80-20 rule, right? You go through the flywheel. No one's talking about capacity. No one's talking about it because it's not glamorous. But I actually have learned in business that things that are not glamorous are a lot of times the things you should focus on. It's in the details. It's the stuff that matters. It's what really moves the needle forward, but it's not glamorous and nobody's talking about it. And our team right now, it's not glamorous. We're probably not doing enough. And it's our lowest score. I think we should focus on it.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I was just thinking about this. And you said this, if we had the team in the room having this conversation, you and I are doing it first. We're going first as the leaders, but like, what if the team are in the room? What would they say? What skills do they think we need to multiply? What do they need to multiply into each other? Right? Where are the bottlenecks? Like if we had this, think of how powerful it would be to talk to the team about this and then take that information and go, all right, guys, we've agreed as a team that we're actually going to go for this so that 6 months from now, we could be on here saying, hey, we actually focused on this thing. It wasn't glamorous, but look at what it's done for the organization.
Absolutely. Mike, this has been awesome. Last here, it says, thanks for joining, everyone. Come back next Thursday at the same time, 11:30 Eastern. And if you don't have your free Giant account yet, get yours at giant.tv/free account. Some people are watching this on Giant. You're on the Ascend product watching this live stream. Some people are on LinkedIn or Facebook or who knows where all we're streaming nowadays. We have a great tech team that's just putting this signal out all over the interwebs. And so go to that address and get your free account if you don't have one. Mike, thanks for joining me today. As always, just such an awesome conversation. Have a great one.
Yeah, you too, bud. Talk soon.